the call scheduled for the next 30 minutes. We want to get wrapped up early so that there's time for questions at the end. And as Joanna mentioned, please go ahead and feel free to type your questions into the little chat box over there in the GoToWebinar along the way. What we'll be covering is essentially the demand response at a high level, and then energy efficiency programs and rebates for these three regions. This is going to be strictly rebate and incentive focused, not a focus on our actual regen technology, though we're happy to share that with you at any point. So the issue, electrical grid stability. We've got aging infrastructure out there, transmission loss. There's that stacked on top of a rapid growing demand, which, especially in these three areas, exceeds the demand available. So there's a couple of things that have been put into place, let it be peaking power plants or the greener and more environmentally friendly alternative, which would be demand response, which actually turns into be a revenue generator for customers as opposed to the peaking power plants. So sliding over to the next slide, and I realize that we have a few second delay here. So we have two things here. We have the utility initiatives and we have the financial impact. The initiatives, our customers are encouraged to reduce peak electrical demand to avoid high demand charges on electricity bills. The demand response programs that have been put in place are used to relieve the grid stress during the peak times and ultimately be able to avoid the use of peaking power plants on, really comes down to those either very hot or in some areas very cold days of the year, to where there's an unanticipated need for that extra electricity being drawn to the grid. The financial impact essentially is that you've got two different components. You've got your kilowatt hours for your consumption, and then you have your kW rate for whatever your peak demands come out to be. So obviously on the demand response days, both of those events end up being, or both of those charges end up being higher. You're paying higher kilowatt hour charges during the peak hours of the day, and then you're setting your demand charges either for the month or sometimes for the year for a particular area based on how much electricity you used at that peak time. So the two drivers that we've got here are demand response and energy efficiency. So what we want to dive into here is just give you a little bit of an overview of what these two things actually are, and then to give you some information for California, New York, and Hawaii programs that are available. So AutoDR, this is going to be applicable to the California and Hawaii markets. So what it is and how it works. AutoDR is kind of a buzz out there still, to where it's like, okay, I'm in an AutoDR program, or there's AutoDR incentives, or there's AutoDR as far as open ADR, the communication protocol. So this just really boils it down. AutoDR is a platform that provides automated signaling from a utility to a customer. So essentially it's saying, instead of running around chasing thermostats, I'm going to put in controls that are going to talk back to the utility that during a demand response event are going to shed my load automatically. The second piece of that is being in an AutoDR program. So there's different demand response programs that qualify for or as an AutoDR program, such as in California, there's 11 different AutoDR programs out of the 20-some DR programs available. Or in the case of Hawaii, you have one AutoDR you have one demand response program, and you're either AutoDR or you're semi-AutoDR. So all that AutoDR really is automated demand response. no manual intervention required to reduce that load. And then in some markets, specifically in California and Hawaii, they offer auto DR incentives. So these are dollars available to pay towards putting in that equipment that would speak back to the utility to receive those demand response signals through the automated demand response servers. So what is covered through auto DR incentives? And once again, we're going to break this down, one on DR, demand response, and then we're going to go and do this same thing on a couple slides for energy efficiency. So for auto DR, any equipment, programming, or services to automate demand response via open ADR protocol. So what that means is open ADR is the way in which the utilities communicate those auto DR signals out to customer sites. So the receiving end of that signal can be an energy management system. They can be digitally controlled thermostats. It can be HVAC cycling controls. They can be lighting controls, remote switches for chillers and pumps for water districts, for any type of industrial applications, a full-blown building automation system, call it a Novar Opus, call it a Johnson Medisys, anything in between there. And then you can be curtailment schedule programming, so actually just programming those curtailment schedules into a building automation system, or the enablement, installation, and measurement verification services in which you would need to prove the auto DR connectivity to the utility to achieve those incentives.
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you for a minute. We've just had a question come across. Can you speak to the availability of auto DR programs in Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts?
Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell you what, why don't we take whose question that is and provide them with an email follow-up of that, because we don't have that included in these slides, and but we do have them available. So as we get to the New York slides and we show what's available there, some of that will be covered, but what's not, we will follow up in a separate email.
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is just giving the typical open ADR communication, just to, what does it mean to connect to the utility? And this is for a Southern California Edison site. Essentially, you have Southern California Edison, who has a DRAS, a demand response automation server, which then reaches out to customer endpoints. In this case, it's showing a regen setup that would be direct controlling an HVAC load at a customer site. So it would be the utility server talking to the regen server, which then connects directly to the customer site. And what happens there is the communication flows two ways. One, from Edison to the site, but then from the site right back to Edison to show, yes, this customer is participating and did receive the signal in this auto DR event. In this particular case, we also give customers a energy management web portal so that they can view their own usage during a demand response event. So that's the auto DR side of the house, and we're going to dive into what the dollars and cents of that are in just a moment. But before so, we want to give you the same breakdown on the energy efficiency incentives, what's available and what can be covered, and then once again, we'll show you the dollars behind them. So what are energy efficiency incentives? We figured just to boil this down very simply, incentives are for pre-approved projects for either retrofit or new installs of equipment that will reduce energy. And reducing energy meaning both of those components that we talked about on the second slide there, kW and kWh. The incentive amounts are calculated by the amount of energy the project saves, which in every case requires measurement verification to show the actual utility or the third party that's managing those incentives of what was saved and what's going to be saved. And essentially, the more you save, the more money you'll earn. So these are I just wanted to cover a few of the highlights of things that are covered, and then we've got a further breakdown by region to show you exactly what is covered. But in lighting, it can be lighting controls. It can be high efficiency bulbs and ballasts. Some markets you get incentives for T5. Some you can get incentives for LED lighting, for delamping, essentially using less lighting within a facility. Motors and equipment, high efficiency motor replacements, installing variable speeds or VFD drives, high efficiency pump replacements. And once again, depending on the geography and the utility, there are different requirements for efficiency ratings to qualify for those rebates. HVAC and refrigeration. It can be anything from replacing a old chiller or package unit with a high efficiency piece of equipment. It can be installing a chiller heat recovery system. It can be installing just simple HVAC controls. So given the kind of framework of what's available and what the intent here is, here's the programs that support those. So in California, there's an array of programs across the 3 different IOUs. So you've got Southern California, Edison, Pacific Gas and Electric, and San Diego Gas and Electric. Just kind of showing you what the territories are on that first line. The demand response types, whether it be generation and or curtailment. And keep in mind, generation in any California market is really going to be stripped down to either sovereign nations or gas generation, be a cogen plant. So capacity payments range. They range because you could enroll directly with the utility in a very low-risk program to mid-risk, or you could enroll with an aggregator. And when you enroll with aggregators, you typically have less risk and higher payments. So the dollars range, $40 to $75 per kW per year in SCE and PG&E, and $30 to $55 in SDG&E. You've got different program periods. So in SCE, you've got year-round. In PG&E and SDG&E, you have May through October, so just the summer months. Time frames are typically going to be somewhere between 11 and 7 to noon to 6, and Monday through Friday, no weekends, no holidays. So I wanted to give you 2 things here. The maximum events, and then also the event history is a couple lines down there. So maximum events are what the programs can call in a given year. Event notification, how long you have until you have to respond. Demand response duration, how long those events can last. The event history, so in SCE and PG&E, these are based on bilateral events. These are an average of what different aggregators and or CBP events have been called. But you can see in Southern California, Edison, it's a couple of events a year for their bilateral programs. That's a good thing for you, the customer, you, the participant, just because you're paid on a KW per year for being enrolled in the program. Then you're paid an additional 5 cents to 50 cents per kilowatt hour during actual reductions. So really the best way to look at this is, what's my biggest bang for the buck? What's the least inconvenience for me to earn this money? And with the bilateral events, meaning with an aggregator, 1, you don't have any exposure to penalties, but 2, you're called a lot less often to receive that chunk of money. So in SCE, 2 to 3 events a year. PG&E has aggregators also tied into their CBP events. So on the bilateral events, you're also looking at 1 to 3 events a year. The CBP events get to be a dozen plus events a year. And then in SDG&E, you enroll through an aggregator or directly with the utility, but there are no bilateral programs, meaning there's no aggregators with exclusive programs. So you're looking at the CBP program, which actually gets called quite often. So this, even for managing your own internal portfolio, it's very important to set expectations to to know that, hey, in Southern California Edison, we're going to see more events, and we're going to see less events than what we're going to see in San Diego Gas and Electric. And once again, so just to kind of keep going through this, and we'll provide the slides and the presentation for your review afterwards, so you can refer to specific information. But wanted to cover the auto-DR incentives. So this, once again, is for California. PG&E, SCE, SDG&E. So you've got anywhere from $250 to $350 per kW in PG&E, $300 for SCE, and $300 for SDG&E. What these dollars are for are to pay for those automated systems to be put in place, the automated communication to connect your sites back to the utility. There's still dollars available. The way that the dollars work are first come, first served. They're going quick. In SCE, they've actually exhausted all of their standard auto-DR incentives, although they've applied to release more. Right now, what's available is about $2 million in their auto-DR Express program. SDG&E and PG&E, well, so let me capture that back. Auto-DR Express is limited down to office space and food retailers. PG&E and SDG&E still wide open to the national retailers, to the a broader range, basically meaning that as long as you have a 100 kW load or better, that you can qualify for some type of incentives in those other areas. But once again, the funds are first come, first served. Just to give you a quick example, 300 kW of curtailment would qualify up to $90,000 of incentives in SCE. So that's $90,000 to pay towards maybe it's an HVAC control system, maybe it's a complete SCADA system for a water district, maybe it's something in between. But $90,000 worth of funding to pay for up to 100% of that project to enable that site with demand response, auto demand response controls. So then going over into energy efficiency for California, and then we're going to jump into Hawaii, then New York. So with the energy efficiency for California, really we'll just kind of give the range. And so already explaining what things are covered here. Once again, we'll send these out so you have them to reference. But anywhere from 5 cents a kilowatt hour up to 15 cents a kilowatt hour for kWh saved. And once again, you have examples of eligible technologies, and also $100 per kW for peak demand reduction. So meaning that if you're able to keep 1 kilowatt down off your peak demand this year versus last year, that's going to pay you $100. So obviously the kWh and kW numbers add up quite quickly. In Hawaii, it's a little more simple. Essentially, in the HECO, Hawaii Electric, you have the Fast DR program, which is an automated demand response program that pays $60 per kW a year. The event payments are 50 cents per kilowatt hour. It's a year-round program, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Once again, no weekends, no holidays. It could be called for a maximum of 40 events or 80 hours per year, though it is a new program, and this is the first pilot year of it, so it's they're anticipating 1 to 15 events in this first year, so we'll figure out how that goes. Event notification, 10 minutes. So once again, it's an auto-DR program. There needs to be some automation going on because you're not going to be able to get a response. You're not going to be able to get a notification and then respond manually within 10 minutes in most cases. And then equipment incentives are up to $3,000 per site. So similar to the California auto-DR incentives, but these are one site having a minimum of 50 kW could qualify for up to $3,000 of reimbursement for controls to connect to their demand response server. And HECO and MECO, so Hawaii Electric and Maui Electric, there are 5 cents per kilowatt hour and $125 per kW, up to 50% of project costs. Once again, they cover energy management systems, lighting, multiple different lighting, whether it be efficiency bulbs and ballasts, or it be lighting controls. And once again, similarly on the premium efficiency motors, pumps, fans. and once again, dollars available. NYSERDA, so once again, we've got this kind of broken up into upstate, downstate, and then maximum incentive per facility. So electric efficiency, energy storage, natural gas efficiency, demand response, and monitoring-based commissioning. So each one of these has its own KWH and KW incentive. These can be done through different avenues. So, for instance, you could go through Converse, you could go through Constellation. There's different aggregators that can take you into the DR market and that can also assist you on total energy efficiency projects. This is just some of the program eligibility. So, electric and natural gas. Con Ed Demand Response Program Guide, voluntary load program, average less than 1 day per year as far as what has been the event frequency, through the minimum reductions, 50 kW on an individual basis, 100 kW through an aggregator, must have interval meters, and 50 cents per kilowatt hour up to $1.50 per kilowatt hour reduced. So in this case, you've got year-round for the DLRP or May through October on the CSRP. And then once again, just a little bit of planned events and notification, 21 hours and 2 hours, and then as needed 2 hours in advance for mandatory reductions in DLRP. So then we just want to give you a couple of success stories. So, you know, you've got a national retailer here that utilized some auto DR incentives, and as well as the automation and equipment installation. So basically they had a $978,000 project. They were able to get $750,000 of it covered. This is a supermarket with 48 locations. They were reducing 2,400 kW, so they got $720,000 in equipment incentives, and they got another $59,000 in energy efficiency incentives at the 6 cents a kilowatt hour rate. This is a water district that had a total of $360,000 in incentives. And between the equipment and programming, they still had $49,000 left in incentives left over. An agricultural customer in California, once again, between the automating for demand response and then the engineering process coordination, $45,000 in incentives left over after their project. So I had expected to get done with a little more time for questions, and I did not, but we still have a couple minutes here. So we will open it up for questions at this point. And once again, for everyone on the call, we will be going ahead and sending out the webinar and the slide deck for your review. And we can provide the same information for additional markets should you be interested in others. So there's New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona. We have additional information for PJM, for Texas. So whatever you're looking for, we pretty much have the same information available. So please reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to provide that for you. Joe, turn it back over to you if there's any questions sitting out there.
All right, I don't see any questions. Everybody, I'm just going to go ahead and share a poll at the end of the presentation, but I think that about wraps it up for us, James.
Okay, thanks, Joe, and thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.